Hello, anatomy and physiology students. My name is Julian De La Rosa. I will be a UTA for the fall semester 2020. It's very nice to meet you if we have not met already. So let's begin today's topic, which is separating and differentiating the different types of vertebrae in your spine. We got cervical, thoracic, lumbar, the sacral region, and the coccyx. We'll go through them one by one, and it'll be fun. So let's get started. So here we have the vertebral column. It curves, it convexes, it concaves. Starting at the top, we do have the cervical. If you zoom in using visible body, you can see the key features of each vertebrae. You do see that the cervical region does have very small bodies. They have a bifold spinous process, and they also have two transverse foramen. So pretty easy. They're pretty tiny because they are in the vertebrae you'll find in your neck, very small. In terms of placement, C comes first, cervical comes first. That's a good way to look at from the top going down. Next region are the vertebrae that you will find behind the thoracic cage, the rib cage. Thoracic vertebrae do have a thicker body. These are more well-rounded. And these do not have transverse foramen. They do have transverse processes. These are very more prominent. These do stick out a lot more. And if you look at the spinous process from the side, does go straight down at a sharp angle. So these are key features to look at looking at a thoracic vertebrae, and we will talk about differences between the other ones in just a second. Last one we are going to focus on today are the lumbar vertebrae. Lumbars are meant to take a lot of pressure from the back. They are at the bottom, so they are expected to face a lot of compression. So they do have very thick and dense bodies. And there is no need for a long spinous process. These are very small, condensed, to keep the whole bone nice and dense. Looking at the transverse processes, these are a lot smaller, a lot less prominent. And then the last two you can look at are the sacral, which are fused vertebrae, and then there's also the coccyx at the bottom. These are also four fused vertebrae altogether. These do not have any foramen, do not have any processes like that. So how can you tell apart these bones? Well, that's a great question. Looking at the cervicals are the only ones to have a bifid spinous process. Now, the vertebrae I always had more difficult time with in my experience were the thoracic and lumbar. They do look similar in my opinion, looking at the bodies, but once you start looking at the vertebrae itself, in my experience, I always looked at the thoracic shaped like a T, going across and down, and the lumbar a lot lower. Looking at these do not have such a prominent transverse process, so the T figure isn't really there. Also, looking at the thoracic spinous processes, this is pointed straight down, and the lumbars really point more posteriorly. So how can you not mix up the order from cervical, thoracic, lumbar? Well, a great friend of mine has told me if you're trying to reach these areas in your back, C is how you can grip your cervical. If you make like a partial T, there you go, this middle section of your back. And L's for lumbar is how you reach the lower section. In terms of rotation, going from top to bottom, the topmost, the cervical, are the most flexible. They have the most range of motion. Then the thoracic and the lumbar actually don't rotate that much at all. And you can see that looking at the articular processes of these vertebrae. Looking at two of the cervical vertebrae, we do see that these two are very close together. These are stacked almost. And the way these two are stacked, these almost slide past one another. And that's how you get the very flexible, almost 90-degree angle turns going left and right. Looking at two thoracics, we do see that these articular processes do stack also on top of each other in a way that they will slide past another one, but they will prevent that one going past one another. Now, because these two are stacked on top of each other, that does allow for more range of motion, which compared to the lumbar vertebrae, just hide this for a second. If you look at the articular processes, these actually do not stack on top of each other. They actually lay side by side. So if you're trying to rotate one, it will run and collide with the other articular processes. So that if you actually look at rotations, the lumbar spine actually doesn't rotate as much. It really does extension and flexion going backward and forward. So how can you tell how many vertebrae are in each region of the vertebral column? Well, there's a slight pattern you can look at in your daily routine even. You may not follow this routine, but you can memorize this and apply it to your lifestyle if you like. There. So in terms of breaking this down, I always say get up at 7, eat lunch at 12, eat dinner at 5, take a 5-minute break, stay up all night for anatomy, go to bed at 4 or 5 in the morning. And the last thing we can look at is there are convexes and concaves in the vertebral column. Now the question is, it starts with concave, then convex. How do you know which one starts with? Well, cervical is concave. We do see concave does have an additional C to it. So I apply that C to the cervical region. So the cervical region is concave, thoracic would be convex, lumbar would be concave, and so on and so forth. That's all I have for you guys today. If you guys have any questions, feel free to contact me. You can probably find my email on Blackboard. And if you have any questions, we're all here to help. Good luck with your studying, and I will see you guys next week. Bye. Oops.